Coming up on Network Africa. Zambians vote in high-stakes presidential and parliamentary elections. Ethiopia rebels form alliance against government. Plus, Algeria starts 3 days of national mourning for 69 wildfires victims. Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale. In East Africa, where millions of Zambians are voting in a presidential and parliamentary elections held against a backdrop of worsening economic conditions, police and troops have been deployed across the country to monitor polling stations, and a record number of international observers are watching the process.
Polls opened at 6 a.m. with long queues seen at voting booths in the capital, Lusaka. At a voting station in Kabwata suburb, voters said they were hoping for change.
The change that I want is the leader that I'm going to vote for to deliver the promises that they've assured us during their campaigns.
Why I have decided to vote is that the economy is not okay. As you are saying, we are suffering.
16 presidential candidates are vying for the top job, but the frontrunners are incumbent Edgar Lungu and his longtime nemesis, business tycoon Hakainde Hichilema, who are facing off at the polls for the third time. President Lungu was amongst the earliest voters.
My impression is that Zambians are ready to vote and they've turned up in numbers. I saw a number of queues as I was coming here. It's reminiscent of what happened in 2011. When people turned out en masse, and I hope that many more people will come and cast their votes.
The important thing is that the decision of who becomes president, who leads this country, must be determined by the Zambian people, the voters, not the people who count the votes. That's number one. So everybody must be allowed to vote. That's number two. Because I'm concerned about the speed there. It's slow. These people need to all vote.
Under President Lungu, Zambia became the first African country to default on its sovereign debt since the coronavirus pandemic began, while inflation soared to 24.6% in June, the highest rate in more than a decade. Opposition Hichilema, who is running for the sixth time, is backed by an alliance of 10 parties. Approximately 7 million citizens are registered to vote for a president, legislators, and local government representatives. This has been seen as a high-stakes election, with Zambia's predominantly young electorate demanding improvements to the economy and better job opportunities. The Electoral Commission of Zambia has promised a transparent and credible process.
Elsewhere in East Africa, Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera has sacked the energy minister and his advisor who are facing corruption charges. The two and one other official, Enoch Chihana, a partner in the governing Tonse Alliance, were arrested on Monday for their alleged involvement in a state oil contract. They were reportedly trying to influence the way the contracts for the supply of oil were awarded. To Ethiopia's Tigray conflict, the country's rebel Oromo Liberation Army says it has agreed a military alliance with Tigrayan forces from the north of the country to fight the government. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, has confirmed the agreement. The government designated both groups as terror organizations in May. An alliance between the OLA and Tigrayan forces could put further pressure on Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The government has not only had to battle Tigrayan forces, it's also facing a series of conflicts in different parts of the country. Meanwhile, the United Nations says the situation in Ethiopia's Tigray region is volatile and unpredictable. The UN adds that there is spillover of the conflict to neighboring Afar and Amhara regions, with an estimated 200,000 people reportedly displaced in Amhara and more than 76,000 in Afar following the entry of Tigray forces into the regions.
Our colleagues in the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs inform us that the situation in Tigray remains volatile and unpredictable, and there is spillover of the conflict to neighboring Afar and Amhara regions. In Amhara, an estimated 200,000 people have been displaced, and in Afar, more than 76,000 people are reportedly displaced following the entry of Tigray forces into the region. OCHA is also looking into information that a health clinic and a school being used to shelter internally displaced people in Galikoma and Kebele in the Fenti zone was shelled, and that a warehouse was ransacked. Within Tigray, humanitarian access has significantly improved, with an estimated 75% of the area now accessible, but the flow of humanitarian supplies into the region remains insufficient. Access via the only road through the Afar region remains partially open due to insecurity and thorough searches at checkpoints. Staff rotations to and from the region is improving. Last week, the UN Humanitarian Air Service operated 2 flights from Addis Ababa to Mekele as planned. Convoys transporting UN staff from Mekele to Semera took place on the 3rd and 6th of August.
And away from East Africa, over in South Sudan, the Office of First Vice President Riek Machar says he has received calls from the generals who defected last week from the military wing of the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition, SPLM-IO. Officials say General Johnson Oloni informed Mr. Machar about their group's acceptance of the ceasefire. Mr. Machar emphasized the need to peacefully resolve the incident that took place in Upper Nile State. Over the weekend, clashes between the two factions saw at least 34 soldiers killed from both sides. Meanwhile, the United Nations says armed attacks in South Sudan's western equatorial region are still being witnessed. Gunmen have attacked and killed residents and left many others nursing serious injuries. A team of peacekeepers have stepped up patrols in the area to help improve security and assess the human rights situation there.
The number, and I don't know them because it was at 9 by 8.
A 27-year-old father of one tells a chilling story of his abduction last month, where he lost his left ear and 3 of his brothers were slaughtered. Many residents have abandoned the villages around Greater Tambura and the town itself, where houses remain deserted and communities have fled to internally displaced sites.
They suddenly appeared and held me at gunpoint, ordering me to sit down. They took off our shoes and started removing our belongings, and they took us to Nabiama. They cut my ear off and killed my relative John. I was terrified when I felt a knife at my ear. They cut it off and threw it to the ground and asked me if I would eat it now.
Violence erupted in late 2013 after Kir from the Dinka ethnic group sacked Vice President Riek Machar and the Nuer people. According to United Nations reports, despite the peace deal, violence is still raging in parts of the country.
It's clear that we are talking about dozens of persons who were killed, dozens of people who remain disappeared, whose family members, whose wives and children are looking for desperately. We are talking about an immense loss of capital. We are talking about crops that are gone, and then what can generate an impending food crisis here in Western Equatoria. We are talking about a big humanitarian crisis with an enormous loss for the peace process and for South Sudan.
Last week, hundreds of people attended a peace rally organized by faith-based groups in Western Equatorial State under the Interfaith Council of Peace as part of efforts to bring peace to the region.
Away from security matters, Algeria has declared 3 days of national mourning for at least 69 people who have been killed in dozens of wildfires. The victims of Algeria's many fires include 28 soldiers who died trying to fight the flames. The wooded mountainous Kabylie region, west of the capital Algiers, has been hardest hit.
Villagers in northern Algeria desperately use water hoses and tree branches to battle encroaching wildfires, which have left 69 people dead. The government has deployed the army to help fight the fires, which have burnt most fiercely in the mountainous Kabylie region. 28 of the soldiers are dead. Local residents have also been helping in tackling the fires.
We are watching the fire to try to prevent it from spreading further, but it seems to be impossible. And now it's reached our zone. All olive trees are burning. May God protect us because it's near the village.
The worst hit area has been Tizi Ouzou, where houses have burned and residents fled to shelter in hotels, hostels and university accommodation in nearby towns. A heat wave and strong winds have fanned the fires, but the authorities say arsonists are to blame for much of the devastation. Arrests have been made, but no evidence against the accused has been presented. It's not clear what their motivation might have been. The president has declared 3 days of national mourning and froze state activities not related to the fires.
And in West Africa, at least 52 people have died in Niger floods, with 34 being injured and thousands losing their homes. Authorities say this includes 5 who died between Tuesday and Wednesday after heavy rains in the capital Niamey, causing significant damage and rendering hundreds homeless. According to the Civil Protection Service's flood monitoring report, more than 4,000 houses and 200 huts collapsed, and 800 heads of livestock were washed away. Several regions of the country have been affected by the floods that have been occurring since the beginning of June. And in Guinea, health authorities are monitoring 155 people who may have been in contact with a confirmed case of Marburg virus. The Marburg case, which WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus says is the first in West Africa, was confirmed in southeastern Guinea. The region was the origin of the 2014 to 2016 West Africa Ebola outbreak, the deadliest in history, and saw a brief resurgence of Ebola this year. Marburg and Ebola are closely related, and transmission between humans is usually through contact with blood or other bodily fluids.
Last Friday, the Ministry of Health of Guinea informed WHO of a case of Marburg virus disease in the country's southwest in a man who died 8 days after onset of symptoms. This is the first known case of Marburg in West Africa. About 150 contacts have been identified and are being followed up, including 3 family members and a health worker who have been identified as high-risk close contacts. Marburg is a very different virus to the one that caused COVID-19, but many of the elements of the response are the same: isolating and caring for those infected, tracing and quarantining their contacts, and engaging local communities in the response. There is no licensed vaccine for Marburg, although there are vaccines under development. And WHO is working with our partners to seek opportunities to assess them during this outbreak through the R&D blueprint for epidemics.
Some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. Nigeria has received 177,600 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. The single-shot J&J vaccine was acquired through the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust, AVAT. They are part of the 29.8 million doses the Nigerian government procured from the Afrexim Bank through the African Union. The balance of the vaccines will come in over the next couple of months and will be deployed to hard-to-reach areas. Still to come on the program. Botswana gives houses to Olympic medal winners. That's in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Let's head back to East Africa now, where millions of Zambians are voting in the country's presidential and parliamentary elections. VOA's correspondent Peter Clotte is in Lusaka, from where he joins us for an update on this. Peter, huge day for Zambians. What's the turnout been like so far?
Turnout has been largely very impressive. The polling stations that I visited saw large crowds sometimes encircle the polling centers. They are pretty enthusiastic to vote. And within the next 45 minutes' time, official polling will end. For those who are queued, the Electoral Commission said they will be allowed to vote. But all in all, turnout has been pretty significant.
This is a high-stakes election, but tensions have fled in the run-up to the polls. Has there been any reports of violence or irregularities in any parts of the country so far in the exercise?
There were a few skirmishes, although there were not violent clashes between rival political parties. In the polling stations that I visited, there were a few disagreements, sharp, if you would may, but they were quickly resolved by the presiding electoral officers. And police were really peaceful, handled it amicably, and people went their way and voting continued. So at no point was voting needed in any of the polling stations that I visited. So all in all, it's been largely peaceful. And some of the poll observers I interacted with were impressed with how the elections were conducted and how the voters conducted themselves during the election process today.
All right, Peter. So how soon can we expect the results to be announced?
Officials of the Electoral Commission are saying that within 3 days, they should be able to announce the results. Some of us raised questions that if you have the results, why don't you just announce it? But their explanation is there are some remote parts of the country. You have to drive 16, 18 to 20 hours to reach those places. And all those figures would have to be tabulated in order to ensure that there's transparency and credibility through the entire process. So they are of the view that within the next 3 days, possibly Sunday, we should have an idea of who the next president should be or would be. In this case, whether they extended the mandate of incumbent President Edgar Chagwa Lungu or decide to elect a new president, perhaps the main opposition leader, Hakainde Hichilema, from the United Party for National Development Alliance, or UPND Alliance.
All right, then now we wait and see how it all pans out. Thanks a lot for your time, Peter. Moving on now, members of the proscribed separatist group, the indigenous people of Biafra, have taken to the streets of Pretoria, South Africa, demanding the release of their leader, Nnamdi Kanu, who is currently in custody for various charges, including treasonable felony in Algeria. The protesters were at the British High Commission as well as the Kenyan High Commission to demand what they called the unconditional release of their leader. But speaking to Channels Television, the Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Mohammed Manta, reminded the protesters that the matter is going through a judicial process which must be allowed to be completed.
We are here to ask the British government to intervene in what happened to our leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who was adopted by the Nigerian government when he traveled to Kenya with his British passport. So we are here to ask them to intervene in the unconditional release of their citizen, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Nigerian government should release our leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, unconditionally. And British government should also interfere in the release of our leader. That is what we want.
My little knowledge of the governance and the law presupposes that this issue is already in the domain of the judiciary back in Nigeria. And by our laws and our constitution, which guides governance in our country, very little can be done now until after the judicial process has run its course. So if anybody, group or individual or government wishes to intervene on this matter, we have to await the outcome of the judicial process.
And our International Youth Day is celebrated annually on August the 12th to bring youth issues to the attention of the international community and celebrate the potential of youth as partners in today's global society. The theme this year is transforming food systems. Well, let's see how the day was celebrated here in Lagos, Nigeria.
The issue of food security takes center stage at the 2021 International Youth Day, a day that highlights the need for support mechanisms by youths to restore the planet and protect life. In achieving this goal, the Lagos State government has gathered youths from across the state, asking them to join hands with the authorities to help transform the food sector in the state.
As we celebrate this year's International Youth Day, the theme we're considering is transforming youth system, food system, I beg your pardon, youth innovation for human and planetary health.
The Commissioner for Agriculture, who is driving the 5-year roadmap, lectures the youth on how to take charge of the sector.
It could be someone who actually produces seedlings for the farmer to make use of. You could actually form a research and development company, a consulting company, that can go into seeing how yields can be increased just by probably doing some technological DNA simulations.
And the Food Hygiene Initiative of Nigeria is ready to partner with Lagos and transform the food system.
Transforming food system by youth innovation for our good health is an urgent need to strengthen the food system in Lagos State. This could be mitigated by sensitization and awareness on key challenges facing food safety in Lagos State.
Agriculture is a critical sector that every government is taking seriously to grow the economy. And the Lagos State government says it's not only joining hands with youths to redefine the sector, but also to achieve food security.
And our climate change is taking its toll on Cameroon, with unseasonable weather bringing fluctuating rainfall and protracted dry seasons, which have all sucked the moisture from the soil, killing cocoa trees and cutting the yield from a farmer's farm. For more than 6 decades, the cocoa that Richard Ambassa Mabasinga harvested from his plantation in central Cameroon faithfully paid for everything his family needed, but now that has changed.
Irregular rainfall and prolonged dry seasons have since sucked the moisture from the soil, killed cocoa trees and cut the yield from his farm. Now unable to fill even a single bag with beans, 77-year-old Mbassa struggles just to buy soap with a harvest that once put his children through school.
There's been 4 months of drought. You see here, everything is scorched. This used to be a productive plantation. Now everything is scorched. 3 hectares are destroyed because of the drought. I presented to you my 3-hectare plantation. How am I going to live with my family?
Prolonged dry seasons linked to climate change in Cameroon has made poor harvest a new reality for many cocoa farmers who farm in small individual holdings. Due to changing weather patterns, Africa's third largest cocoa producer behind Ivory Coast and Ghana has struggled to meet a long-term target of boosting cocoa output to over 300,000 tons annually. He says the country now struggles to reach 250,000 tons and farmers are struggling to even produce 500 kilograms per hectare compared to 1 ton per hectare a few years ago.
I used to produce 15 bags per year, and now I can't get even 1 bag. You see, I can't produce a bag. I can't.
The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said that the change in climate patterns could have negative impacts on export earnings on which the countries depend on. Small-scale farmers like Ambassa feel the heat more than anyone. Yavia Antagana, who used to grow cocoa in the same area, was drying his latest harvest, much less than he is used to, for August.
Because the dry season lasted more than 6 months here in Nkenge, that's why we don't have enough cocoa at the moment. In August, I should have 3 sheets like this one, but this year, as you can see, we do what we can.
After clearing his cocoa field, he's now planning to grow tomatoes, a crop that grows faster, and one that he hopes will help him send his kids to school and look after his family.
And finally on the program, Botswana has given each member of the country's Olympic bronze-winning relay team a 2-bedroom house. The 4x400-meter team took Botswana's only podium spot at the just concluded Tokyo Games. It's the country's 2nd ever Olympic medal, having won a silver in the London 2012 Games. Well, congratulations to them. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shiboale. Bye for now.